Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Carrie and Dani. Um, so, Carrie, you sent me an article, and I know it
Did.
annoyed you. And when I read it, it annoyed me too. So, I was wondering, since it just irritated both of us,
Yeah,
should we talk about it today?
absolutely,
All
absolutely.
right, tell us all about it then.
Yeah, I've got my other monitor over here, so if I'm looking off to the side, that's why. Um it comes from I found it on Adventist Today. And it's pretty short.
How long ago?
It was published, I think, the 18th, 19th, something like that. No, I actually just saw it today, but
Okay.
the original one, I think they brought it from somewhere else, I believe. But if you look on Adventist Day, one of their recent posts, it's there. And the article is called "Why Do People Leave the Adventist Church?" And I'm just going to read it to you. It's only four paragraphs,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
we might pause if you want me to stop. Just go. I want to say something about that, and we'll do that. It's called "Why Do People Leave the Adventist Church?" Most people don't leave Adventism in a dramatic exit, they fade. Church statistics make it plain. About 4 in 10 who join eventually drop out. Young adults disappear fastest. The surveys keep pointing to the same ordinary wounds. Hypocrisy that hangs in the air after potluck, marriages that collapse under the pressure to look perfect, congregations where no one learns your name, local fights that make the second coming feel like background noise. Doctrine ranks lower than most members expect.
What a load of crap. Sorry, keep
Exactly.
going.
Yeah. Plenty of people who walk away still claim Jesus. That I think is fairly true. What wears them down is the package that comes with him here. 1844, Ellen's
Mhm.
authority, young earth demands, Sabbath as the ultimate loyalty badge. Those things hold until real life hits. A science textbook that doesn't match the lesson, a gay relative the church won't name, a cover up that protects the wrong person, or the slow discovery that many have never heard the full story of assurance. True Adventism, they're saying, has always taught that salvation is secure in Christ, yet too many leave still carrying the weight of performance. They wanted a place that lived the grace it talked about. Instead, they got a scoreboard for what you avoided eating, wearing, and questioning. When
Yep.
the friendships thinned and the rules stayed rigid, the door looked like relief. The numbers keep arriving, the reasons stay stubbornly human, but the door swings both ways. Grace is still on offer, and some who left are finding their way back to a version of the faith that finally matches the claim.
All right, so they're saying that no,
Yeah,
I'm not impressed. I don't like the fact that they make light of the reasons why people leave.
they,
Um,
yes, they make light of it. I think and it's funny where they say doctrine ranks lower than most members expect. I think let's flip that. In my experience in the conversations that I've had with former Adventists, I know you've had a lot of conversations with former Adventists. We are both former Adventists. Um, I think doctrine ranks much higher than members would like to believe.
yeah. So if I think of all the people I know that have left, and there's been a lot of them,
Hmm.
um, a lot of them left while I was still attending, and only one of them that I can think about left for like faded out. And that was literally a fade out. And
Hmm.
they had some issues at home, and the kids wanted to do sports, and there was something happened, and anyway, they didn't go for a week or two. They just wanted some time out, and then they slowly vanished. And I know because I've known this person for 50 years, and
Hmm.
I know that they were upset that nobody contacted them.
Yeah.
But then once they started hearing um, the actual gospel, even if they had been contacted, and so this is like 10, 15 years later,
Hmm.
if they even if they were contacted, then it wouldn't have made any difference because by then that they'd learnt new truth. But originally, yeah, they faded out.
Hmm.
Everyone else I know didn't. It just it just annoys me that they're trying to make it that people didn't leave for doctrine. So when it said it down here, what did you say? Someone find it. They wanted a place that So they're saying people left because they just wanted somewhere that lived grace and they got a scoreboard instead of eating and wearing and you
Yes.
know there was a hypocrisy that hung around after potluck.
Yes.
That's why they
Yep.
left. So their survey says everyone left for the same ordinary little emotional wounds, like your feelings got hurt. And so I
Hmm.
just want to say, because I don't think I've clearly talked about this, that is absolutely not why I left. There's nothing. In fact, I stayed for 50 years. Um, and those little emotional things they're talking about, I would never have left for them
Hmm.
because I always used to, no matter how, there's been some really bad ones, like little emotional things. I mean, seriously, I had some seriously good reasons to leave, and
Hmm.
I never left because I just kept saying, I'd tell myself, everybody's in a different stage of their relationship with God. Everyone's in a different place of
Yep.
personal growth. This is just where they're at. If you know, God asked us to forgive everybody 70 times 7, and I just kept forgiving and I just kept showing up and making excuses for all that stuff. So
Hmm.
I never left for that. I was dragged out, kicking and screaming by people that kept saying, read your Bible. Read your Bible. Read Galatians. Read
Yes.
Hebrews. Read
Yep.
your Bible. And I'd read it and they'd explain it to me and I'd be like, whoa, how did I get lied to so
Hmm.
bad? And then
Hmm.
a week later, I'd open my Bible and go, where did it go? Because the neural pathways in my brain were so set with Ellen White's version of the Bible. My brain fired that direction every time that I just
Hmm.
it was so hard to see what the Bible said. I could only see what I'd been told it said,
Yeah.
not what it actually said. And it was a long, hard thing, and it gave me headaches. And
Hmm.
it was really hard. Even without anyone, I could read the Bible, and sometimes I'd have to take notes, and God would show me something, and if I didn't write it down, my subconscious would suck it back. Because
Hmm.
seriously, your subconscious is just invested in keeping us safe, which generally means staying where you are, even if it's unpleasant,
Hmm.
because you know how to navigate it.
Yeah. Better the devil you know, I guess, you know?
Mm. Yep. So, so yeah, I just wanted to say that that is 100% not why I left. I just made
Yeah.
excuse after excuse. Yep, over and over again. And for even like way back, I can remember being I was probably 21 is one of my just something that really stands out to me because I was talking to a friend just this last week and we went said, "Oh, what happened to so and so?" Um, and I remember so and so. I took weeks between my friend and we finally got so and so to come to church. And they rocked up on their motorbike and they came to church and it was all good. And then I'm pretty sure it was after the service. We stayed for, it was just Sabbath school as well, straight out the door, right? Straight out the door.
Hmm.
No, it must have been between Sabbath school and church. They needed, and they went out and they were smoking.
Hmm.
And one of the elders went out and said, "Excuse me, but if you have to smoke, can you please not do it on the church property? Can you at least go outside onto the pavement?" It was in the car park.
Hmm.
Um, and that person stayed for church. They were there for church. I remember that, and they never ever came back. And I'm pretty sure that was the last time I ever invited anyone to church
Yeah.
because it wasn't safe. I couldn't trust
Yeah.
that my pet, that anyone I brought along would be treated nicely.
Yeah.
Oh, how ridiculous! Like you can keep smoking, just do it on the pavement, not in the car park.
Well, because heaven forbid somebody would come to the church and see somebody smoking in the parking lot, and then this person had caused somebody else to stumble. Too
I
much.
mean,
I mean, it's just, I remember one of my husband's pastor buddies when he was pastoring in Minnesota. It was much more on the liberal progressive side. He tried to get his elders to let him to put ashtrays by the door. You know, those tall ones with the sand on top.
yeah.
So that way people would come, and I don't think that I would don't think they ever let him do it. You know, just because. And for me, um, I would say the church hurt and everything was probably why we started to distance ourselves because Those who may not remember, my husband was employed by the Seventh-day Adventist Church for about 20 years as a pastor and then an administrator. And we dealt with a lot of church hurt because of conference incompetency, we'll just say. After he left working for the church and had another job, he wanted to befriend the local church pastor, and we would, hopefully maybe start attending, which is where my husband used to pastor, actually. He took the pastor out for breakfast after we'd had a few conversations, and the pastor was not kind to my husband at all. And my husband's like, I just want to be your friend. And the pastor literally said to him, he said, I have no male friends, and I sure as, I'll say heck, because I'm editing, don't need a friend like you, is what he told my husband. This is the local pastor.
That is horrible.
I have never seen my husband more upset than that. So he went to, and at this point, he wasn't working for the church anymore, but still an ordained minister of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, went to the local conference and told them about it and said, I'm not that I'm trying to get the guy in trouble, but he needs some help. Like this is not, and nothing happened. There was no apology. The man never, it was just, and so that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. And there was multiple issues over the years, and my husband have been employed by
Mm.
three different conferences, and I won't name them.
Yeah.
People who know me would know who they are, which ones they are. Um, and at every one, there was just gross incompetency from the higher up admin and local church members that just made things really, really, really difficult. So when you leave the church employment situation, fortunately, my husband had a backup plan. He has other education, so he was able to leave ministry. Um, then you can look at things a little more clearly. Because when your livelihood depends on employment from an organization, you still want to be part of that organization because you need to remain part of that organization for your family's livelihood. And
Yeah.
then after he left that employment, and you just start seeing a little more from the outside, and you're seeing things a little clearer. Um, COVID hit, and then just all of the how things were mishandled, or you're just not going to church, so you're at home. And I started doing a little more research and different things, started going to a rabbit hole, and then I found this book, read it.
I read that.
Mhm.
Mind blowing.
And I was trying to reconcile what I learned in this book, which is very well annotated. I did have I loaned this book or sent this book to a relative who read it, and there are some parts of it that are a little more strongly worded than they maybe should be. So I think some people might be put off by that, you know, the little more emotional. But I'm trying to reconcile what was in here. Very well annotated. You can look up the footnotes. You can look up all of this. He's got evidence to support what he says. This is Ellen White, A Psychobiography by Steve Daly. It's available on Amazon. And then trying to reconcile it with this book, which is, and some people may have seen this one. I don't, Dani, you hadn't, I know I've talked about this book
No,
before on
I'd
the
never
show,
seen that before.
but it's called Stories of Little Ellen and the Message. And it is from think that's my grandpa's handwriting. No, it might be my I don't know. It's from the Pacific Press Publishing Association, copyright 1950. Okay, so this is an old book. And it has stories, and it's for kiddos, and it's illustrated, and I remember sitting on the floor on a Sabbath afternoon reading it. I was very much a little bookworm, and many happy little stories about Ellen White and the miracles and things, and I haven't had a chance to like fact check those, but when you're told as a child that this is the woman who, your church, a lot of it's based on, and she wrote beautifully, and then you find out that she plagiarized. Y'all can argue with me, but don't bother because I'm not going to listen. Um,
I just want to comment on that because,
yeah.
okay, I want to comment on that because it is true that it
Hmm.
wasn't called plagiarism when she was alive. Okay, so I got over the plagiarism and
Yep.
decided that didn't upset me.
Yep. Yep.
But I'll tell you what did upset me.
Okay.
The fact that a lot of what she plagiarized, quite a bit of what she plagiarized, um, was from Joseph Smith from the Mormon Church. And if you look at his first vision, which came, I don't know, 10 to 12 years before her first vision and bits and pieces, they are nearly identical. And then to find out that they were cousins.
Hmm.
Um, so so yeah, the book that the I read Steve Daly's book a little bit later. The one that really got me was when I read The White Lie by
Yep.
Walter Ray.
Yep. I have that one too.
And that was the first one that I read, and then there was some other stuff. But yes, so it's the plagiarism upset me. Um, and I was like, oh, that's not cool. But I was quite happy to accept that it wasn't plagiarism in her day until I
Hmm.
realized she was copying off people like Joseph Smith, started the Mormon Church,
Hmm.
and that they were cousins. And then I started wondering, and it's not addressed in either of those books. None of the books say this. It was just
Hmm.
my brain, and I started wondering. I wonder if the two cousins got together and thought, oh, how can we like start a following and make some money? You have that one and I'll have this one. And I doubt that really happened, but that's my brain started thinking stuff like that because the overlaps between the two
Well, and there's
churches.
another book. I think I showed it to you. I need to. I have so many books that I'm trying to work through right now, and this is one that I need to work on more. It's the Victorian Women in the Theater of Trance. So
Oh my goodness.
it does not mention Ellen White, but it's her day. And I mean, now we've got TV. We have things to keep ourselves at home entertained in the evenings. Back then, they had no TV. There wasn't much for entertainment. So it was not uncommon. And I'm not saying 100% this is what was going on with Ellen White. Okay, I'm not, but I'm reading this book. It was not uncommon for a young woman who had her husband or another male handler, somebody that was with them, would have a theater of trance, of visions, of a presentation or something. Oh, I see, and that was so people would
Yep.
come and listen. That was kind of part of what they did. Ellen White came out of the Shouting Methodists, which dealt with a lot of the charismatic type stuff, and which
Yep.
is always very interesting to me because Adventism is very anti-charismatic, as far as like the speaking in
Yep.
tongues and things,
So I
so
haven't looked into that trance stuff a whole lot, but
yeah.
that when I started, so I got sidetracked and I've been not too
Yeah.
well at off and on again. But when I started looking into it, it started in the same area of the USA where she grew up in. So
Hmm.
she would have grown up attending these, and
Upstate
and
New
she,
York, I think, was kind of where it all started.
yep, and so it was all, but she was in that area, and from what I can see, I read she did her name popped up somewhere in something I was reading about that. There is somewhere stuff that it might not be in that book, but there is stuff that suggests
Hmm.
very strongly that absolutely
Hmm.
she was. I mean, when I say a trance medium, these days we think it means probably different things to what it meant back then.
Hmm. Well, in this
Um,
book, so when I got this book and I read it, sorry, I got my old kitty who wants attention. Um, I told my husband he needed to read it and finally got him to. And at first he's like, you know what? He said and we've talked about this before. He was inoculated really against a lot of these arguments when he was in
yep,
seminary. With a lot of this stuff they talk about in seminary and then explain it away. But then he's getting into more things and what bothered him personally the most. So what for me was her process of writing books, which we've talked about before, using her editors and everything. What so that bugged me as a little bookworm. I felt very deceived. And what bothered my husband the most was that she was always telling everybody to leave all of their money to the church.
yep.
Leave your money to the church, leave your money to the church in her will. Then when she died, she left nothing to the church but debt.
Okay, because I think the bit that upset me the most is
Hmm.
I've got friends that are strongly into the occult. And if
Hmm.
I'd just read it, I would have thought, there's no way Ellen boarded on occultic stuff. This is not true. Someone's making up lies about her. But then if you go to the White Estate online, which is um a church-owned digital library, and you start looking stuff up, then you can see that it really is true. And so I've got friends that have been into occultic stuff. And so um, she talked about her spirit guide, and then people try and explain it away and things, but there was other places where she talked about writing to the smell of roses, and there were other little bits and pieces that I know are all, you take it as a single event, and it's like, oh
Hmm.
yeah, maybe they were outside the window.
Hmm.
But you know from the other stuff she wrote that they weren't. And then when you start connecting it all up, that spirit guide, I've currently got friends online that get messages from their spirit guide.
Hmm.
Um, in fact, what recently I was reading something that was just beautifully written and deeply meaningful. It was just incredible. I almost sent it to you actually, Carrie. It
Hmm.
was just beautiful. And the guy had written this beautiful story to women who grow up through tough times and trauma but remain soft, that still
Hmm.
keep their soft heart and stuff. And
Hmm.
it was just a beautiful tribute, and it was incredible. And I get to the end of it, and it's signed by the guy's name, and I just thought, oh yeah, because it's so close to his real name, that was his pen name. And so I've been following this guy for a little while now. Just what he writes is so moving and poetic and deeply meaningful. And then I end up in a private Facebook group with this person, and they're talking about stuff that you don't see on their main page. And what I thought was just their pen name, they explained was the name of their spirit guide. And my first thought was, ah, ah, I've got to get out of this Facebook group. There's people channeling things from nuns that died
Yeah.
200 years ago.
Yeah.
And now this deeply meaningful, beautiful stuff that just brings tears to my eyes because it's so beautifully written is coming from this guy's spirit guide. It's like, and
Oh,
I was gonna, and then I thought, no, 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 no. I've made friends in here. And my first thought was, I need to stay in case they need to hear the truth about God. That's what I've been trained all my life. You get into a scary situation, you don't just dump them. You suddenly think, how could this be a ministry opportunity?
right.
Which is weird because up until now, they've been ministering to my soul. What they write's deeply beautiful.
Hmm.
And then I thought, so slept on it for 2 nights, and I woke up in the middle of the second night and went, Dani, why are you panicking about this? You spent 55 years of your life in a church that was run by a lady that had a spirit guide. How is this any different? You believed
Hmm.
everything she wrote. She had a spirit guide. You weren't scared of
Yeah.
her. It didn't actually come from God. We know that it doesn't match the Bible.
Hmm.
And then I remember one of my other friends that wrote about how the first time they read Desire of Ages, it was so beautiful, it made them cry. And just thinking about this whole deep emotional reaction to stuff. And I was like, this is sounding really familiar.
Hmm. Well,
That
and
was just That was about 2 weeks ago. It was just
yeah.
a really weird experience that I had.
Yeah. Well, and I think, getting back to the, leaving, and when my husband and I had lunch with the pastor of the church where our membership was, and told him that we were dropping and if he could get the ball
Mm.
rolling, on that. And I said, I don't believe Ellen White's inspired anymore. I just don't believe in her. He goes, well, everything is in the Bible that, that Adventism believes, and he truly believes that. Um, and I said, I disagree. And I think it comes back to one of the reasons for me as well that I left, I think, is the sheer arrogance of Adventism, to where if you say, and many people believe that the 28 fundamental beliefs are found 100% from the Bible. Okay. They're supported through Ellen White. And I think if you look, maybe I'll explain this right. The arrogance of Adventism to think that they have looked at the same book that all of the other Adventists are looking at, or all the other Christians are looking at, and come to a completely different conclusion on many of these doctrines. If you take away Ellen White, that's the only different source of truth.
Um, Back to the article that you sent me.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
what's back to the thing that just struck the little fire for this whole
yeah,
conversation.
yeah.
Because I found it, and it was published this month, so it's very
Hmm.
recent.
Hmm.
Um, I just thought it was interesting, the second line where it said most people don't leave Adventism in a dramatic exit, they fade. And I just wanted to say that I feel like I faded out in some ways, but I faded out, that was it. But it was dramatic for me
Mhm.
because I was fighting with these giant doctrinal issues. I did not, there was no part of me wanted to believe I'd committed over 50 years of my life to something that wasn't true. And I really want to highlight this, not because I want people to feel sorry for me, but because unless you understand the trauma, the emotional and physical and mental trauma of realizing you've based your whole life on something that's not true,
Mm, mhm.
unless you really understand that, you don't understand how hard it was to leave. And if you don't understand how truly hard and traumatic it was for me to leave, then you won't ever take anything I say seriously enough to research it for yourself. You'll believe the stuff you've been told, so you won't even go and look. And
Mhm.
so I really need to comment on this. It was a really big deal.
Yeah.
And I've got PTSD in my past, and so leaving the Adventist Church brought around. It's been over 20 years with no symptoms of any sort or issues with it, really. Well, not really. And then this just brought it all back up again. And no, not what caused the PTSD, but it brought up a lot of the symptoms come back and the flashbacks and the nightmares and fear that I was going to go to hell forever if I left this church.
Mhm.
Um, Even though I didn't, it was just, it's really hard to think you've based your whole life on a lie. I mean, there'll be people out there with some understanding. There'll be people out there that have been married 40 years and discovered he had an affair or something,
Mhm.
and they've realized their whole life was a lie, and they talk about the trauma of ending the marriage and the relationship and leaving. Well, I was in a relationship with an abusive organization, same as an
Mhm.
abusive husband. Um, it's really hard. So I left quietly, but then I didn't. I did a show on SDA Q&A with Peter, and
Mhm.
we've started this show. Um, but we didn't start doing this until we were both well and properly out. And it was because we just want to encourage other people to ask
Mhm.
questions and make a safe place for them. Um, were there some comments under that article that you wanted to read? I mean, you had a look
Oh
at it, whether
yeah.
it stood out to you?
There's one from Rochelle Anonymous that we've both interacted with online, and she's questioning, where the surveys came from that are the information of why people left. The only surveys she's seen were given about a decade ago, less than 1% of former members who left the church. I know we haven't been contacted to find out why we've left. And you would think that an ordained Seventh-day Adventist minister with 20 years of experience with him and his wife, with when you walk out, that there would be some follow-up, but no, nothing official. Um, the
That's
surveys,
crazy, Carrie. So just really quickly, where
yeah.
we live here in New Zealand, if you have a job and you leave, you get an exit interview and they talk to you about why you're leaving. I mean,
Hmm.
it's standard business, forgetting the fact that surely if it's a religious organization and you've been a pillar and a leader in it, you'd want to know why your pillars and leaders are leaving.
Hmm.
Outside of that, it's standard business practice.
Hmm.
Do an exit interview and see why someone's leaving.
Yeah. Well, and at this
So
point,
that's just flat.
yeah. I mean, he wasn't employed. We were just regular members, but still,
Yeah. So
um,
back to what you were reading.
yeah. The surveys were in, let's see here, full of biased, leading, multiple choice questions, not actual space for people to write out their reasons why they left and have the church actually listen to them. The surveys were intentionally constructed to construe the results in order to perpetuate the story people don't leave for doctrinal reasons.
Can I just
So,
interrupt for a second, Carrie?
yeah,
I just want to say that I saw an online show that this person did about this, and
yep,
they actually had copies of the actual survey. I know this person research and facts
yep,
checks everything, so I
yeah,
saw them present copies of these actual
yes,
surveys.
yep, yep,
This is true.
yeah. Um, the surveys were intentionally construed so the church can continue to point fingers at those who leave instead of actually addressing their doctrinal questions or problems. She says, I am part of a large community of ex-Adventists. I don't know a single ex-Adventist who did not leave for theological or doctrinal reasons. In fact, it was because we believed the theology doctrine were true that most of us stayed in as long as we did, despite all the abuse, infighting, misogyny, and other problems. But once we
Yeah.
found out the theology and doctrines were based on lies, we pieced out. So then she challenges them and says, "Can you give any actual data that the church has collected through surveys in, say, the last 5 years? How many people left the church at what time compared to how many people were actually contacted for a survey? What was the actual surveys given out? How was that data processed and by whom?" So she's challenging them to show their numbers, show their receipts, for what they've done. But the
Yeah.
reality is not all people that leave the Adventist church do what we did and get your name dropped. They just fade away,
Yeah.
and they can be on the books for 10 or 15 years, and if the pastor or the current church members don't want to address it, they just leave it alone. There's no requirement to audit church books at all. None. So it's and I think if and I have heard, I'm going to butcher the quote, if your organization is true, it should be able to stand up to some scrutiny.
Yeah.
And how
Um,
do you know something is true if you don't listen to the other side? When
yeah.
something comes to trial, you don't just listen to the prosecution or you don't just listen to the defense. You listen to both sides,
Yeah.
you know?
Was there
So
anything else in the comment you were reading?
Oh, yeah. Side note, she says, you say true Adventism has always taught that salvation is secure in Christ. That is factually untrue. There is
Yep.
zero assurance of salvation in Adventism. Ellen White herself said, those who accept the Savior, however sincere their conversion, should never be taught to say or feel that they are saved. That,
Or feel. Don't miss that. You
yep.
should never teach someone to feel that they're saved. So,
Yeah, well, we're not supposed to feel anyway. That's Christ Object Lessons, page 155. So I hope that this shed a little bit of light on things for people as far as, why people leave. If you are in the church and you hear that somebody has left, don't just assume they left because their feelings were hurt. They might quit attending because their feelings are hurt. That 100% happens. But if people actually withdraw their name, they've left the church, and they are actively saying they have left the church, chances are it's for doctrinal reasons. You know, take a look at those. Make sure it stands up to some scrutiny. Um, there's another comment underneath it says, because they're not being taught how to have a genuine personal relationship with Jesus. At the end of the day, literally nothing else matters if we're not leading people to know, love, and follow Christ. That's why people leave.
see,
Part of it.
that's true. That's a really big issue. Okay.
Hmm.
And that fits in with what Rochelle Anonymous said.
Hmm.
Um, because you can't, I can't have a genuine marriage if I never feel that there's a commitment there or a relationship. And you can't have, Ellen White says that you should never be taught to say or feel that you are saved. Okay, without that assurance of relationship, but if you're not allowed to feel that you're saved, without that assurance of relationship, how can you actually have a genuine relationship with God? How can you have a genuine relationship with anybody when you've got fears that large stuck in there?
And when you can't trust somebody to keep you in their heart if you're not perfect. If I thought that my husband would kick me aside the moment I said or did something that displeased him, where would our relationship be? And minor things, like a lot of the stuff Adventism is worried about is pretty minor in the grand scheme.
Yeah, totally.
Yep.
So I know we've covered this topic before, guys, but not
Mhm.
exactly from this angle. It's something that we go round and round, and I guess it'll come up again next time we read something ridiculous online and think you're trying to water down stuff. I just I don't like articles that try to water things down and quietly misdirect people. and go, oh, no, no, it's not about doctrine. Nothing to see here in the doctrine corner. Don't look over here. Look over there at that person that's got butthurt feelings.
Yes. Oh, and
But
it's
as
just
long
the
as you,
it's the shaking. It's the shaking. Don't worry
yeah,
about it. Just it's the end times. It's the shaking.
as long as you're looking at that stuff, you're not going to actually look at the doctrines and go, oh, I've been lied to,
Hmm.
misled,
Hmm.
and yeah, showed half truths and
Yeah.
all of the above.
Yeah.
Don't know about you, but I get to the end of some of these chats with you and I'm like, I think I need a nap.
Yeah. It doesn't feel all warm and fuzzy either, does it?
Not always, no, but someone has to talk about this stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, unless you've got any nice, tidy other summary things to add, I'm just gonna go
Yep.
like, subscribe, share, guys. We try to keep these things deep enough that people ask questions from them, but also light enough that you can share this with anyone you want and it won't and and hopefully they'll ask questions. We try to keep it deep enough to be meaningful, but light enough to sneak past the defenses and, as Carrie calls it, the inoculations. We've been vaccinated against hearing some things.
Oh
It's been
yeah.
pre-explained so the questions never pop up.
Yep. Yep.
We try to not hit those points that instantly put people's defenses up and keep
Hmm.
them stuck where they are.
Hmm. Yeah.
I love chatting to you, Carrie.
Yes, we will chat again very, very soon. Everybody, have a great day, whether it's morning, night, wherever you are in the world. We will catch you all next time for another conversation with Carrie and Dani. Take care, everybody. Like and subscribe.